has a heritage. Our party today has a heritage of 105 years of struggle. That's amazing, comrades, and it's something that we should be very proud of. As part of that heritage, I'd like to remember some of our comrade elders who have passed this year. Comrades Hannah Middleton, Jimmy Donovan, and Beryl Miller. These comrades made solid contributions and were dedicated to the working class in this country. And so I'd like to remember them on this occasion as well, because we stand on shoulders of people like them and others. I'd like to hand over now to the party president, Vinnie Molina, to welcome you all and introduce our celebration tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much, Comrade Elizabeth. And thank you to all of you who are taking the time to join us in this celebration. My welcome to the diplomats from the Republic of China, the comrades from Cuba, comrades from Venezuela, and the diplomats from the DPRK embassy in Jakarta. We have sent a written message, the comrade from Cuba, who also have sent a written message. It is a wonderful opportunity for us to welcome you in celebration of a milestone that not many other parties have achieved, and not many organizations can achieve, not even humans can achieve more than 100 years very often. But our party has, the party of the working class in Australia. And like Elizabeth mentioned before, some of our elders who have given their lives for this party. To be able to enjoy a Communist Party today after 105 years means that people have worked tirelessly in trying to build a different type of party, a Marxist-Leninist party. And we built on the legacy. This party has twice been sent into illegality by people in power. We got the experience where one of our general secretaries, Lance Sharkey, was sent to jail for sedition, where other comrades participated in the struggle against fascism and enrolled in the army to fight for freedom, and came back to find themselves victims of repression, where the homes were raided, where the party offices were raided several times. And we continue to build. Today, we got a new generation of young communists who are joining our ranks to continue that struggle, to continue to build on the legacy. And our responsibility is to continue to train Al-Qaeda to take over this party into the future. It is a privilege, to be one of the comrades in the leadership, to hold the position of national president. It is a big responsibility. We always tell our young comrades to have positions in our party. It doesn't mean power, it means more work. And this is a long haul. And, Bill Bridge was saying, some people fight for one day and they're good. They fight for several years and they're very good. But only a few fight all their lives. And that often becomes the indispensable ones. With this last weekend, it was in Canaland in South Australia, where we had a very successful state conference, the 38th conference. And we had a good debate with the comrades. We enjoyed ourselves in a public event that was well attended. And comrades in Queensland also host the Queensland State Conference, and New South Wales last weekend as well. And we're all getting up in this opportunity to build up towards the 15th National Congress to be held in Melbourne next year. So it is a very exciting moment in the life of our party, a party that continues to build, a party that didn't disappear after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and a party that we continue to strive to build working class power. And eventually, time will say when we continue to fight for socialism and communism. And we're happy to work with other forces, with other parties, with other, in building the movement for democracy, for a new society, and for a free Palestine, where we all have grown up and learning about this televised genocide in which the communists have put have stood in solidarity with the people of Palestine, and we have been there for the last 2 years campaigning for this, and we're sure that Palestine will be free. We're sure that with the support and with the contribution of the communists here and elsewhere, we're going to see a free state of Palestine. So I would like to leave it there. And thank you very much with staying with us here. And sorry, I was just getting a little bit distracted. But yes, I think that we got Comrade General Secretary Andrew Evan, who also will be introduced by Comrade Elizabeth. Thank you, comrades. I hope you enjoyed the program.
I'd like to welcome our General Secretary, Andrew Irving, to give us his introductory remarks now. So, Andrew, there's so many faces on the screen, which is wonderful to see. I can't see where you are, but please jump in.
I'd like to welcome, on behalf of the party, friends, members, and friendly organisations to this event. I was in Sydney last weekend speaking to the state conference in our lead up to the Congress. So there was a meeting of comrades in New South Wales talking about the way forward for our party. And of course, one of the things I said was that we're 105 years old, but we're a very young party, because even though there's a number of comrades have grown up through the many campaigns and activities, and we're talking about large campaigns in which communists played leading roles. In particular, I want comrades to consider the Penal Powers Campaign. The Penal Powers Campaign was a campaign across the whole of Australia to defeat industrial laws introduced by the Menzies government that was much harsher than in recent industrial legislation. So for almost 20 years, the industrial system allowed for the deregistration of unions and the sequestration of monies with almost no action except going to the tribunal and saying that the union has acted against a business. And at the peak of that campaign, Jack McPhillips, who's one of our stalwarts, in writing about the Penal Powers Campaign, said that, they introduced legislation to affect waterside workers. And in that legislation, they could sequester the money of maritime workers if they took industrial action. So after the event, they could actually take money back from the Maritime Union. That was in 1963. And in that process, they were had sequestered £500,000. Within a year, they had sequestered £500,000 from ordinary waterside workers. Now, you can imagine in current terms how much that actually meant. The legislation in the end was ruled illegal, but the estimation was that over the term of the legislation, that it could mean up to £1.5 million could have been levied against the Maritime Union. Finally, in 1969, the trade union movement, namely the ACTU, were dragged in kicking and screaming. And after the jailing of a trade unionist, the whole ACTU agreed to a general strike that effectively made the legislation illegal. But through all of that period, and there's been a couple of events to celebrate the anniversary of that campaign, through all of that period, even though there was the division in the international communist movement, the establishment of Maoist movement in Australia, which heavily divided the communists in Australia. The Communist Party, in conjunction with a number of unions, including right-wing unions, were able to run a very comprehensive and successful campaign, to the point in Victoria where 27 unions walked away from the Trades Hall Council and formed a separate grouping to prosecute the campaign against the penal powers. So the communists were able, even though there was huge divisions, to maintain a united campaign. And even in the period after that, a number of normally conservative unions continued to work very closely with Socialist Party, now Communist Party members, to continue a militant coalition of forces because of the success of that campaign. So it shows that even in the most difficult of circumstances, workers can work together despite fairly aggressive and nasty campaigns across the trade union movement. So it shows the steely commitment that the Communist Party had to working with all forces to the advantage of the working class. So that's a sterling example of what the Communist Party was historically able to achieve. And I'm sure that the number of comrades here could equally give many examples of that great success. So I think that it's very important to remember the history, and I'm sure that there will be other speakers tonight that will provide equally outstanding examples of what the Communist Party was able to achieve across many areas of work, despite the Cold War efforts of many forces. Thank you very much, and great success to tonight's event. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I'd just like to, I've been reminded on the chat of another Comrade Elder who passed this year, Comrade Maria Hilario, and her work in particularly Cuban solidarity and with the distribution of The Guardian was a really solid contribution to our party. So I just wanted to acknowledge her as well. As communists, we've long understood that the liberation and the advancement of peace is dependent on proletarian internationalism. And that internationalism is something that we've taken very serious in the party, and we value our fraternal relations with other parties, and we value our relations with our diplomats in Canberra, who we often engage with, and adds a real richness to our party, and hopefully for you as well. So I'd like to introduce our diplomatic representatives who are here with us tonight with their greetings. So first I'd like to introduce Councillor Zhang Jiming from the Chinese Embassy and from the Communist Party of China. Welcome, Jiaming.
Hi, thank you for the introduction, Comrade Elizabeth, and good afternoon, dear comrades. It's so good to see all of you, and especially so many familiar faces. It's a great honor for me to be invited to this ceremony. On behalf of the Chinese Embassy in Australia, I'd like to extend the warmest congratulations to all the comrades in CPA on your 105th birthday. We understand that the dissemination and practice of socialism in Australia has gone through an extraordinary journey. Over the past 105 years, the CPA has applied the universal principles of Marxism to the concrete realities in Australia, striving to eliminate unemployment, poverty, injustice, racism, and war, while endeavoring to unite all left political forces in Australia, just as Comrade Urban just introduced. So facing the challenges both within and outside Australia, the CPA upholds the principle of putting the needs of people first and puts forward many progressive and constructive proposals. So with the increasing support from the public, the CPA is becoming an important political force pursuing peace and progress in Australia. So congratulations. Well, similarly, as a Marxism party, the Communist Party of China, the CPC, also has always upheld the principle of putting people first. Last week, the 20th Central Committee of the CPC just convened its fourth plenary session, adopted the recommendation of the CPC Central Committee for formulating the 15th five-year plan for economic and social development. The CPC will remain true to its original aspiration and mission of seeking happiness for the Chinese people and rejuvenation for the Chinese nation. While at the same time, China has been standing in the international arena as a force for peace, stability, and progress. In recent years, General Secretary Xi Jinping has successively put forward the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, the Global Civilization Initiative, and the Global Governance Initiative. In the future, China will keep contributing its wisdom and solutions to the betterment of the world. And over the years, the CPA and the CPC have developed our friendship through deepened dialogues and exchanges. The CPC stands ready to work with the CPA to further promote exchanges and cooperation so as to contribute more to developing friendship between our two peoples, pushing forward peaceful development of the world and building a community with a shared future for mankind. So finally, I'd like to wish this conference a great success, and may the course of the CPA achieve greater progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Jiaming. I'd also like to introduce the political attaché. Oh, sorry, I've just realised I was muted. Thank you very much, Jiaming. I would like to also invite the political attaché from the Chinese Embassy and the Communist Party of China, He Kang, to say hello to the meeting tonight.
Hello, comrades. Good to see you today. I'm He Kang from Chinese Embassy, and hope this conference a great success. Thank you.
Thank you, He Kang. I'd also like to introduce the charge d'affaires, Luis Lea from the Venezuelan Embassy, and invite Luis to give a greeting.
Hello, everyone. Congratulations for this 105th anniversary. It's a long struggle for the rights. Can you hear me? It's okay. Just for the rights of the workers of the community and the more vulnerable people around the world. The Communist Party in Venezuela was founded in 1931, so it's going to be 1 century in 6 years. Vini has visited Venezuela many times. I want to say hello to my friend Vini, Andy, Andrew Irving as well. They all have visited us here at the premises of the embassy. And they have been, I have to start saying that CPA has been like most supported organization, the most supportive organization I have talked to since I arrived in Canberra 1 year and a half ago. I have had the opportunity to talk to Andy many times. He also and his partner helped me out a lot in some little small events we have organized together, and I feel so proud to be part of a small time of working together with the CPA. I belong to the Communist Party in Venezuela as well, so it's been for me to be like at home, being with you during this time. I really congratulate you. I'm how to say this? I feel like I'm part of the CPA. Even I'm not in Australia. As most of you know, I'm about to leave this country. Still, I feel like they're my best friends in Indonesia were the members of CPA. They help me out to disseminate all the information about Venezuela. They help me out to disseminate the hard times we have had with the disaggregation of the United States, with all this accumulation of military forces in the Caribbean. So this I want this relation to continue. Also in Caracas, thanks to the technology, the communications, and we will have the opportunity to keep this alive. And one more time, thank you for inviting me to this meeting and receive on behalf of the President Nicolas Maduro, on behalf of the Bolivarian Revolution, on behalf of the people of Venezuela, the most heartfelt congratulations on the 105th anniversary of the CPA. Thank you so much one more time.
Thank you, Luis, for the time that you've given us in your short time while you've been here. And it is with sadness that we say farewell to you, but you don't go alone, because you go with our solidarity, our ongoing solidarity for what we know is extremely dangerous and troubling times in Venezuela. But not having the embassy here does not mean that our solidarity will not continue, and we look forward to engaging with you beyond this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to introduce two members of our international department. We value the international department. It's a very important part of our party, and that is Andy Carruthers in Canberra and Vinnie Molina, our president, and they have written greetings to share. I'll start with Vinnie, who's going to share a greeting from the DPRK.
Thank you, Comrade Elizabeth. Yeah, we did receive a greeting from the Charge Affairs at the DPRK Embassy in Jakarta. Dear comrades of the CPA, sending the warmest greeting. The Embassy of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea to Indonesia sincerely congratulate you on the occasion of the 105th foundation anniversary of the CPA. The 105 years long history was a brilliant and successful one of justice, independence, struggle, and advance. On the occasion of this glorious anniversary, once again congratulate all the members of the CPA. We confirm that the relationship between the Workers' Party of Korea and the Communist Party of Australia will be further strengthened in the future. So 1 June, Charge Affairs ad interim, the DPRK Embassy in Jakarta. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinny. Andy will now share with us a greeting from Laos. Andy?
Yes, thanks, comrades. Yep. Thank you. Thanks, Ellie, and thanks, comrades here. This is from Mr. Sisuk Sayalat, Minister Councillor of the Embassy of the Lao People's Democratic Republic. It is indeed a significant milestone. I send greetings to your upcoming online celebration of the 105th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of Australia. I convey my warmest congratulations to your party on this historic occasion. Thanks, comrades.
Thank you, Andy. Now hand back to Vinny, who will share a greeting with us from Her Excellency the Ambassador Tanieres Diegues Lao from the Cuban Embassy and from the Communist Party of Cuba.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Cuban ambassador sent us a video as well, but it was quite large that couldn't be downloaded, but luckily we got the written message as well. Canberra, October 27, 2025. To the Communist Party of Australia. Dear comrades, on behalf of the Communist Party of Cuba and its first secretary, Miguel Diaz-Canel, I extend warm congratulations to the Communist Party of Australia on the occasion of the commemoration of the 105th anniversary of its founding. Cuba and the Communist Party of Cuba have maintained strong ties of friendship, solidarity, and mutual cooperation with the Communist Party of Australia. We hope to continue developing this relationship between both organizations in the future. We would also like to take this opportunity to wish you every success in your next Congress, which will take place in 2026. We take this opportunity to thank the Communist Party of Australia for its solidarity and support for the most important causes of the Cuban people throughout all these years. In particular, we appreciate the CPA's firm position against the economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed by the United States of America against the people of Cuba for more than 6 decades. Your solidarity and firm commitment to this cause is highly appreciated by our people, who suffer the impact of this unjust and criminal blockade, which has now been intensified to its maximum expression. Long live solidarity, long live the Communist Party of Australia, hasta la victoria siempre. Congratulations, Dr. Tanieres Diegues, Cuban Ambassador to Australia.
Thank you, Vinny and Andy, for those greetings. And just on the, I'm sure people are aware that the vote in the UN took place yesterday after that greeting was written. And once again, the whole world has stood in solidarity with Cuba for the lifting of that cruel, inhumane blockade. And that was despite this year the US putting a concerted effort into sending letters to heads of state, trying to coerce and intimidate them into supporting the blockade. But once again, Cuba prevails. I'd like to hand over now. We've got a short video before we go to our keynote speaker. So I'll get Vinny to load up that video and enjoy.
So I think you can say that as a result of one's own life's experience in the Depression, the international situation as we saw it then, and combined that with the reading of books, which gave me a understanding of how things worked in the world, and that it was necessary to be a revolutionary and be for socialism.
When the union's inspiration through the workers' block shall run, there can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. Yet what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? But the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. They have taken untold millions and they never told to earn. But without our brain and muscle, not a single will return. We can break their hold in power, gain our freedom when we learn that the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong.
They don't care whether you have the money to pay for electricity. What they care about is private profit.
Anything left for us to do but organise and fight for the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever.
The Communist Party of Australia supports the voice.
We're in a situation where no governments in Australia are able to really address the needs of the people.
We're asking for a ceasefire and for the government to stop supporting Israel in its genocide against the Palestinian people.
I hope you enjoyed that short video, and I probably should have said at the beginning that for those who didn't know, it was our comrade Peter Simons, who was very important, guided the party as General Secretary through some turbulent years, and then remained General Secretary for a very long time. And for those who knew him, appreciated his calm and wisdom. And for those who didn't, it's part of our legacy.
And taking the opportunity that Comrade Amber is present in this meeting. Thank you very much for putting together the wonderful short video for us. Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce our keynote speaker. So Peter Lim was actually born in Perth, and his first brush with activism was protesting against US imperialist aggression on Vietnam when he was at high school. Attending university, funded himself by holiday factory work, and he refused to sit the politics exam due to a far-right lecturer. He worked for 3 years building roads, then on the Whyalla Ironworks, before completing a history and politics degree in Adelaide, studying Marxism-Leninism under Bruce McFarlane and writing a thesis on the French Popular Front. He joined the Young Socialist League, later the Socialist Party, and was active in peace, socialist and anti-apartheid movements, as well as solidarity with Chile. He wrote several books on the history of the working class and national liberation movements of South Africa. In retirement, he hasn't become inactive. In fact, he's remained very active. We often see him at rallies for Palestine. He also has given several talks at the Communist Party of Australia's Politics in the Pub here in Perth and the CFMEU on the history of May Day and Eureka. So welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Comrade Elizabeth, and warm greetings to everyone, to the party leadership, to the representatives of branches across the country, and the diplomatic representatives from fraternal parties. That indeed was a really wonderful video that showed vividly our great history. And Comrade Andrew has highlighted some key themes of the history, which I'll speak to now. It was on this day 105 years ago that the Communist Party of Australia was founded, a party that has always fought for an Australian government based on the working class led by its vanguard party, with socialism and peace its priorities. A trailblazer, advancing in Australia the ideas of Marx, Engels and Lenin, and based on dialectical materialism and proletarian internationalism, the CPA not only championed struggles of workers and their unions, but also pioneered theoretical advances in this country in women's and Indigenous rights, and strongly backed solidarity with national liberation movements and struggles against fascism and imperialism. The presence and comments and messages of diplomats today from China, the DPKR, Laos, Cuba and Venezuela remind us of solidarity struggles past and present. Over the decades, the party has remained active and effective in all these spheres, which remain central tasks today. As is the need to actively build support for the CPA in a fast deteriorating international and national political scene. The party was founded in Sydney on October the 30th, 1920, the impetus given by revolution abroad and intensifying class exploitation at home. Campaigning against imperialist war has been a central struggle right from the start. Revulsion against the carnage of World War I saw splits in social democracy that gave birth to communist parties around the world, just as economic conditions favoured the need for such a party. The working class had grown and matured, and the CPA brought together diverse socialist bodies from around the country who agreed with the internationalist principles advanced by Soviet Russia, led by Lenin. The first successful socialist revolution and building of socialism in the USSR was an inspiration to those who formed the party. Branches grew, a party press was established, Marxist education expanded. Workers had terms such as class struggle, materialist conception of history, labour theory of value, and dictatorship of the proletariat clearly explained to them. At this early time, the party exerted a significant influence in the New South Wales Labour Council, even in the ALP, influencing its policy adoption of a socialist objective, and it played a key role in forming the ACTU. These gains scared the capitalist class, who engineered violence and vile propaganda against the CPA. Communist ideas faced fierce resistance from the forces of reaction. Already in 1920, there were violent attacks on communists in Sydney. Right-wing ALP leaders expelled communists who had joined in an early premature effort to apply the United Front. And a few early CPA leaders who carried with them revisionist notions from previous reformist organisations failed to withstand such pressure and deserted the party after the end of a revolutionary wave in the mid-20s. But in general, a solid start was made. And more class and politically conscious workers and progressive intellectuals recognised the party had come to stay and supported it. The party, in fact, quickly attracted skilled workers such as fitters and turners, electricians, workers from the wharves and ships, mines and factories. Solid branches formed in Sydney, Melbourne, around Newcastle, Wollongong in Lithgow and Broken Hill among miners like Edgar Ross, who bequeathed us his book of Storm and Struggle on the role of the party. J.B. Miles led a strong branch in Brisbane that gained an office in Trades Hall until expelled by right-wing Labor bureaucrats. Adelaide and Perth and their ports saw solid party growth as well. Horizons widened. Co-founder Bill Earsman, fitter and turner, went off to fight in the Red Army in the 1920s. Wharfie Stan Moran studied Marxism in Moscow in the 30s. And in the 30s, the party continued to expand as the Depression hit workers hardest. By now, liquidationists who had been in the party had been removed, and the leadership now included consistent communists like Lance Sharkey and the metal worker Tom Wright. More migrant workers now joined, as did the unemployed and working farmers. It was quite remarkable the number of country branches that formed in the 30s, all around the states. At a time of the rising threat of fascism, and the fascist New Guard violently attacked the communists, the party adopted and applied the important 1935 report on the United Front by Dimitrov, helping it overcome earlier sectarian errors. By now, party leadership increasingly was exerted in trade unions of maritime, mining, rail, transport, construction, metal, factory, and other sectors. This always alarmed pro-capitalist parties. In 1949, Labor called out the army to defeat communist-led miners. Just as in 1998, Howard and his capitalist mates tried strikebreakers in the notorious Patrick's dispute against maritime workers. And Comrade Andrew has mentioned the penal powers and how the party and Jack McPhillips fought back against them. Communists consistently exposed the dangers of class peace policies that inevitably opened the door to further attacks on workers, whether in the Accord of the 1980s or in Albanese's vicious attacks on the CFMEU today. But on another question of peace, on world peace, the CPA also stood firm. The role of the party has always been consistent and strong for world peace. In its very first year, the CPA opposed imperialist war on Soviet Russia. It consistently warned against fascism as early as the 1920s. Solidarity with the Spanish Republic against fascist aggression saw party members fall in action there. In the 1938 Port Kembla dispute, Comrade Stan Moran, and I remember him well, dubbed Menzies Pig Iron Bob, whose trade with militarist Japan indeed came back as bullets to kill Australians and Chinese. And the Australian Communist Party was very active in opposing the Japanese militarist aggression on China for many years. In 1940, the CPA opposing imperialist war was made illegal by Menzies. And I remember old timers would tell me about burying party documents in the backyard. Menzies had actually praised Hitler. Police raided our offices, members were jailed. But during World War II, 4,000 party members fought. The war greatly raised the prestige of the USSR and the CPA, whose membership rose sharply to a height of 23,000. It had put down deep roots. It then took constant, very constant, daily, hourly imperialist hot and cold wars and daily crude anti-communist propaganda to blunt this growth temporarily, but party campaigning for peace accelerated as the dangers of nuclear war and imperialist aggression intensified. The party worked hard to build the peace movement with a wide range of bodies, as was mentioned. US bases and nuclear-armed warship visits became a focus of the broad peace movement in which party members were active and influential, working to unify and give clear direction. They worked patiently to build the Australian Peace Committee, bring in unions and stage protests, which continued year after year against the Iraq and Afghan wars and the Palestinian genocide and aggressive imperialist war built up against China today, despite what Trump has said. The CPA actively has always fought for proletarian internationalism. In 1980, General Secretary Peter Simon underlined the many proud achievements of the Australian working class and its party, seen in, quote, decisive solidarity with the new Indonesian Republic, Korea, Vietnam moratorium, Greece and Chile, opposition to apartheid South Africa, hands off Russia and hands off China committees and the International Brigade in Spain, unquote. The party and the unions it led demanded independence for colonial peoples. In 1945, veterans marched across the Sydney Harbour Bridge to support Indonesian independence, just as many thousands marched this year for Palestine, with party members very active. The capitalist system seeks to exclude the party from elections, but when it can, it stands candidates. As we saw in the video, in Queensland, Fred Patterson, tireless fighter for sugarcane cutters, and who helped reduce the influence of fascist ideas amongst Italian migrant workers in North Queensland, represented the state seat of Bowen from 1944 to 50. He was brutally bashed by police of the right-wing Labor government, which, unable to defeat Fred Patterson, simply gerrymandered his seat out of existence. In other states, party candidates stood in many electorates despite attacks, despite being ignored by capitalist media and more recent legal restrictions. In 2012, my old mate Tony Oldfield won a seat on the Urban Council, and I'm sure the party will continue to make advances. With capitalist parties capitulating to British, then US cultural imperialism, the party championed Australian independence and development of a national culture free from imperialist domination. It highlighted the significance of the Eureka Stockade and its fusion of class and national struggles. Communist and militant unions developed May Day into a mass celebration of workers' politics and culture, and fought for its continuation when opportunists, particularly in the right of the Labor Party, tried to gut it of all its politics. The success of militant May Days under party influence sparked repression. Police tried to prevent workers raising the red flag. For example, in 1921, a militarist mob of army veterans attacked the Sydney May Day. Police in Perth broke up CPA May Day events in 1928, and in 1931, Melbourne CPA marches were brutally battened at Trades Hall. The CPA made sure, however, that May Day remained a fighting day, a focus for collective labour action, solidarity with comrades on strike, and with environmentalists fighting company rape of the environment. Across Australia, people saw the CPA as a party of a new kind, able to fundamentally change society for the better. It attracted the cream of writers and artists. Catherine Susanna Pritchard, one of Australia's greatest novelists, joined 5 trade unionists to found the WA branch in December 2020, and she was later joined in the party by many other writers across the country, including the always solid such as Judah Watton, as well as those that sometimes vacillated such as Dorothy Hewitt. Communist painters such as Noel Coonahan put art at the service of the party and world peace. And I know that often lately the editor of The Guardian has been calling for a cartoonist to join The Guardian services, so I hope that happens and we can attract again artists. Activists use theatre and film to good effect, and communist writers addressed racism. Already in 1929, Pritchard had published Kunadu, a novel probing the exploitation of black women. On Indigenous rights in the 1920s, when both Liberal and Labor parties supported racism and the White Australia policy, for example, an ALP minister referring to Indigenous workers said he would simply shoot the lot. At this time, the Communist Party was far in advance of all other parties in the country in supporting self-determination. Influenced by Lenin's internationalism and a 1927 Comintern directive to work for black liberation, the CPA attacked the ruthless exploitation of black labour, many of whom worked for no wages. It attacked the terrifying experiences faced by black women, and that when Indigenous people resisted, murderous raids were launched against them. Just this week, we've had the situation of the West Australian governor finally apologising after centuries of the open massacre at Pinjarra. The party's advanced 1938 program of struggle against slavery for full economic, political and social rights demanded for Indigenous Australians full equal rights, absolute political freedom, prohibition of slave and forced labour, viable Indigenous states independent of imperialism, and full rights for parents to children without fear of kidnap to slavery. This is 1931. If CPA policy had prevailed, there would never have been a stolen generation. In 1939, party activist and metal workers union leader Tom Wright brought out New Deal for the Aborigines, nailing the role of colonialism, capitalism and racism. In 1947, his report to the Central Committee indicted slave master governments and employees. And in the historic 1946-49 Pilbara strike, the CPA was the only party to actively support Indigenous strikers put in chains and sentenced to hard labour simply for agitating for better conditions. The CPA never wavered in full support for national liberation. Party members such as Fred Rose and Hannah Middleton made major contributions applying Marxism to Indigenous Australians, as did Indigenous members of the party, such as Ruby Hammond in Adelaide. And so it was with women. Right from the start, women were prominent in the party, and the party put forward a completely revolutionary approach. Just this morning, I was discussing the crude and demeaning way in which women in Australia were treated in the artistic field. To name a few of the women that were early active in the party, Catherine Pritchard, who I've mentioned, Dora Montefiore, who represented the CPA at the Comintern in 1924, Christian Jolly Smith, Joan Williams, and Hannah Middleton and Beryl Miller, whom we sadly lost this year. I remember Beryl affectionately from Melbourne and Adelaide. The CPA played a major role in changing ideas on gender and equal pay. Communist women were active in the peace movement, in women's organisations, in their unions. Comrade Sally Mitchell, who I knew in Adelaide, was the first female fitter and turner in South Australia. And so similarly amongst youth, the party successfully developed the Eureka Youth League in the 40s, making good progress before revisionists axed it in the 60s, after which the YSL developed. Since 1991, the CPA has continued to organise youth. Let me just say a few words on splits and revisionism. Spread of anti-communist propaganda took many forms, and when combined with right-wing revisionism or left-wing sectarianism, as well as overseas divisions, it had negative effects. Feeding into this situation were aggressive coups led by US imperialism in Iran, Congo, Indonesia, and Chile that had the intended intimidating effect, while impatience and illusions bred by temporary economic boom, together with scientific changes such as containerization and other forces such as deindustrialization that began to reduce the size of the industrial working class in the country. There were two splits in 1961 when Ted Hill went off on an anti-Soviet platform. I remember drinking whiskey with Ted Hill in his office in Melbourne in 1987. We were still able to work together then in the National Left Fight Back Conference. Influence of petty bourgeois ideology began to take its toll, especially among some intellectuals. And by 1967, a new leadership influenced by the dead-end notion of Euro-communism abandoned the clarity of democratic centralism and winning working class power in favour of a vague left coalition in a hodgepodge of liberal radical ideas. Right-wing revisionism became chronic. In 1971, a strong section, including leaders of several trade unions, left to form the Socialist Party, which maintained Marxism-Leninism and beat off yet another revisionist push in 1983. Now, the logic of these revisionists reached its logical conclusion in the 1991 liquidation of the CPA, after which the SPA reclaimed the name as it exists today. I never cease to wonder when some of the recent petty bourgeois intellectuals who make a comfortable living writing for the capitalist press seek to ridicule our committed leaders and invariably fail to, in their histories of the left, fail to even mention the fact that the CPA was reborn in 1991. But across all these problems and trials, leadership of the working class movement is a major achievement of the party, clear from the fear of communists that we see daily in the capitalist system. The CPA produced and continues to produce, and we've heard from them today, great leaders and rank and file at national, state and branch level. In a country where theory is often derided, our leaders defend Marxism-Leninism from those who prefer the anarchy of capitalism and the theoretical poverty and hypocrisy of Labour and Liberal parties. Today, we remember past comrades for their courageous struggles. We salute the long-term steadfastness of General Secretaries such as J.B. Miles, Lance Sharkey and Peter Simon, who never renounced communism, who never deviated into bourgeois revisionism. We can be proud of the theoretical contributions of these leaders who applied Marxism and Leninism creatively in Australian conditions and never abandoned the leading role of the working class from whence they came. And on that score, let me just add, before I finish, a few recollections to paint this more vividly. As a young man, I was moved to see E.V. Elliott of the Seamen's Union lead a delegation of the National Liberation Front of Vietnam into a Sydney mass meeting. He rose from a simple worker's life to lead the union and sit on the party's central committee. In the 70s in Adelaide, I marvelled at the grassroots effectiveness of Steve Papas, an emigrant from fascist Greece who sold hundreds of Guardians each week. I recall shaking the hand of Peter Simon at a town hall meeting. It was the firm hand of a waterside worker. In 1987, he asked me to use my long service leave to organise the National Left Fight Back conference in Melbourne, where I stayed with a retired worker, Dick Carey, in his tiny council flat. In Perth, I witnessed the phenomenal work for peace of Joan Williams and the prodigious output of party leaflets by retired waterside worker Vic Williams, who also served on the Central Committee. The youth work of Robin Stevens, a factory worker when I recruited him. I recall leafleting with Brian Tennant, one of the stolen generation, at the paint factory where he worked for peanuts. And I remember Jim Henderson in Brisbane, Jack McPhillips in Sydney, Leon Brinkhoff, Wollongong coal miner, with whom I visited the USSR, all on the CC, and there are so many others. Vinnie Molina in the CFMEU, Anna Farr's phenomenal work for The Guardian, the late Jim Donovan in the MUA, ordinary workers, but extraordinary communists. And unlike our parliament, with rarely a worker ever present, the CPA is always full of workers. So in conclusion, drawing lessons across these 105 years, we see the validation for the consistent, principled, scientific socialist approach of the CPA. Despite repression, despite a capitalist media loaded against us, the party steadfastly presented positive alternatives for a peaceful, socialist, non-racist, non-sexist, internationalist Australia, free of imperialist domination and capitalist exploitation. And there's much to learn from past victories, as we saw on that video, as well as from setbacks and how they were corrected, how increased membership was achieved, how repression was fought. We shouldn't imagine revisionism won't reappear one day. It faced Marx in the International. It faced Lenin and CPA leaders. In times of slow growth, some people attempted to try and liquidate the party, to look for an easy life, to accommodate with capitalism and defect to the ALP. But history always shows these negative forces can be overcome by staying true to the party of Marx and Lenin. And recently, the corrupt Morrison and then Albanese governments have shown they are hell-bent on militarisation and ruled by the rich for the rich. To workers still voting for Labor, the party offers a clear alternative to rule by the exploited class. With its policies of genocide and war, the CPA has always offered a viable alternative in its program for socialist ownership of the means of production, a foreign policy of peace, a government firmly based in and on the working class, led by its most politically advanced vanguard, committed to class struggle and proletarian internationalism. So let us remain united and work tirelessly to realise these aims and build support for the CPA forward to the next 105 years and the next party congress.
Please join me in thanking Peter for such a wonderful contribution to our celebration today. It's always a pleasure, Peter, to share in one of your talks because you never fail to learn a whole lot more than you knew before. And thank you very much for that. I was reminded in the chat that we do have a party history website. And if you go and have a look in the chat, you'll find the link to that. I also saw in the chat there was a greeting from the DPRK Friendship and Cultural Society, and thank you for your greeting. Thank you so much, Peter. This won't be the last time we hear you speak. We appreciate your knowledge of our very rich history. Now, I'd like to move on. We're going to get some snapshots, some perspectives from across the party. And I'd ask the people contributing to try and stick to your 3 minutes so we get through everything. And I'd like to first welcome Comrade Warren Smith from the Maritime Branch in Sydney to give us his perspective. Thank you, Warren.
Well, thank you so much, Comrade Chair, and thank you, Peter, for what was a really wonderful contribution. Firstly, I'd recognise the Gadigal and Bidjigal peoples as the traditional owners and custodians on the land which I live and work, and that sovereignty was never ceded, and pay respects to elders past and present. It always was, always will be Aboriginal land. There's so much to cover with respect to 105 years of the Communist Party, because the struggle in the maritime industry goes back 105 years. And today, October 30, 2025, we mark 105 years since the 26 men and women gathered at the Australian Socialist Party Hall to form the party. Radical socialists, militant trade unionists, former IWW members, inspired by the Russian Revolution, as we've heard, and determined to find a path to socialism and a better and fairer world for the working class and all oppressed people. In that meeting were representatives of seafarers. In 105 years, and I think Peter's contribution is slightly demonstrative of this, is that few industries have experienced communist involvement as deeply or continuously as the maritime industry. And the wages and conditions of that maritime workers enjoy today were won through struggles led by generations of communists. From 1920 to now, thousands of communists have transformed Australian workplaces and Australian society as a whole. And when we speak of communist leadership in the maritime unions, we must speak of Jim Healey. Healy became a wharf labourer, joined the party after witnessing Labor's betrayals in the Depression, elected to General Secretary in 1937, a position he held until his death in office in 1961. And under Healy's leadership, the WWF, Waterside Workers Federation, was transformed from a defeated union into an incredibly powerful union, abolishing the bull system, replaced it with the gang system. 12-hour shifts become 8-hour shifts and 6-hour night shifts. Slings and weight loads were controlled. First day's post established. Attendance money was guaranteed for workers, even when there was no work. And even the bourgeois newspaper, the Bulletin at the time, called him the best single PR device Australian communists have ever had. In 1938, the communist leadership demonstrated the power of internationalism. And Ted Roach, the communist secretary on the South Coast, confirmed that pig iron aboard the Dalfram at Port Kembla was destined for a Japanese munitions factory. Every single worker stopped, marched off the job, led by the party. For 9 weeks, Port Kembla wharfies defied pig iron Bob, and he got his name in that dispute. And the WWF had pledged to assist Chinese workers in that fight against fascism, and in 1938 they kept that promise. Elliott v. Elliott, mentioned by Peter, transformed the Seamen's Union of Australia. After being blacklisted by shipping companies for being a Bolshevik, they got that right, was elected Queensland Branch Secretary in 1936 and joined the party in that year. In 1941, he became the Federal Secretary and served as the Federal Secretary of the Seamen's Union until 1978. Under Elliott's communist leadership, the harsh and dangerous working conditions of Australian seafarers greatly improved. He created and established the Seamen's Voice Journal, which is an incredible publication, which the historical volumes still exist, emphasising unity, solidarity and internationalism. And the SUA became renowned for its involvement in political issues like the anti-apartheid struggle with the oil embargoes and protests against the Vietnam War. It was a huge and strong fighter for peace. The scale of communist involvement was just remarkable. Large numbers of communists worked on the waterfront, at sea and in broader maritime industry from 1920 through to today. And the iconic leaders I've mentioned were all backed by dedicated rank and file party members. And beyond wages and conditions, communist maritime workers led campaigns for peace and anti-imperialism. The WWF boycotted Dutch ships carrying goods to crush Indonesian independence during 45 to 49 in the Black Armada, as wonderfully written by another communist, Rupert Lockwood. Maritime unions opposed the Woomera rocket range and have a long history in opposition to imperialist and unjust wars. And these weren't narrow economic struggles, but battles for a better world and for socialism. So today, after 105 years after the CPA's formation, the struggle continues. You've got companies like DP World now planning to automate container terminals, threatening hundreds of jobs of wharfies, purely as a union-busting exercise and an experiment of dock workers the world over. And the Maritime Union of Australia, the inheritor of traditions built by Healy, Elliott, Tom Nelson, and many others, along with many rank and file workers and communists, continues fighting this corporate assault. And as we celebrate 105 years of the Communist Party of Australia, we honour the contributions of those comrades and the many rank and file communists whose collective strength and vision for socialism made the victories possible. The party delivered annual leave for the Australian community. It delivered leave loading. It delivered public holiday pay. And they were through actions of the members of party that so many working conditions we take for granted, even in the national employment standards today, were delivered through struggles led by communists. The battles were battles in a larger war for workers' emancipation that began when 26 revolutionaries gathered in Sydney on October 30, 1920. And that struggle continues today on the wharves, on the ships, and in every workplace where workers face the dictatorship of capital. The Communist Party of Australia, 105 years on, continues its commitment to that struggle. Solidarity forever, comrades, and long live the party.
Thank you very much, Comrade Warren. I'd like to now invite Comrade Romina Beetson from the Melbourne branch to give us her perspective. Romina?
Romina has been in and out. Is she there?
Yeah.
I think, Romina, you're muted.
You're
Maybe,
muted.
Romina, if you unmute yourself.
Oh, I had problem with my video and now with my sound. Sorry about that. I'll start again. But happy 105-year anniversary of this great party. From 1920 to today, generations of communists have campaigned for workers' rights, peace, Aboriginal and land right, migrant and women's right, justice, and much more. While we are normally looking back with pride of our history, but we need to focus on our work and especially working class struggles and the campaign for peace, environment, and humanity for building a social justice and socialist society. I would like to briefly speak about the revolutionary Red women who have struggled for peace, justice in harsh and dangerous situations where in some cases they have been forced, they have tortured and imprisoned. However, they have continued their struggle. In October 2020, the Workers' Weekly Guardian did publish a Red Women competition. The series celebrated the lives of revolutionary women in Australia and was part of the CPA centenary celebrations. In Melbourne, we produced 6 series on revolutionary women on 3CR Community Radio. The first of the series was about the life of Pauline Mitchell. Pauline is recognised as the person who first alerted Australians to the establishment of the United States secret military intelligence base at Pine Gap. In the 1950s, Pauline lived in Alice Springs, working for the local paper, the Centraland Advocate. She noticed the arrival of US Air Force engineers who brought a large caravan bristling with electronic equipment and so on. And also US planes were landing at Alice Springs Airport with high-ranking military personnel and heavy equipment, tractors and cranes on them. She worried about this and she tried to get this out to the public. Finally, she managed to get this story out. Perhaps she was the first person to alert the Australian public to the establishment of the secret US base at Pine Gap, which still exists. She was instrumental in setting up the Campaign for International Cooperation and Disarmament in 1959. Pauline was a long-time party member and peace and justice campaigner. The second of the series was about the life of late Dr. Hannah Middleton. Dr. Hannah Middleton was a long-time peace and justice activist, a leader in the Communist Party of Australia and the Australian Anti-Bases Campaign Coalition. I don't think I need to talk about Comrade Hannah a lot. I think most of you know a lot of her work. Just briefly, between 1970 and 1971, Hannah carried out field work in Australia, living with 11 months with the Gurindji people of the Northern Territory, and in 1972 presented her doctoral thesis, called the Land Rights and Civil Rights Campaign of the Gurunji at Wattie Creek. She continued her peace work and much more throughout her life. The third of the series was about the life of Beryl Miller. Beryl joined the party in 1955. She was soon elected as Secretary of State, South Australian State Secretary. Beryl joined the Eureka Youth League at the age of 15 and was active for socialism ever since. Beryl joined the party in 1952. She was active in the Union of Australian Women as well as the Women's International Democratic Federation and the Australian Peace Committee. In 1964, Beryl represented South Australia when the Communist Party of Australia organised the first women's delegation to the Soviet Union. Beryl continued her solidarity and peace work into the 1990s. There are many women who work for peace, justice, and solidarity work. We need to remember them and talk about their sacrifices and how their work has made a big difference and have changed life for the better. I believe you would agree that we are fed up with continuous wars around the world, and we need to continue to campaign for peace on earth, peace and independence for Palestinians, no war with Venezuela, Iran, no war at all, and no sanctions. We do know that sanctions kill. Let's campaign for a peaceful world. Thank you, comrades, for listening.
Thank you, Comrade Romina. I'd like to move on now to a comrade from the Perth branch, Comrade Colton Underwater, if you'd like to give us your perspective.
Yeah, sure. So when I think of the Communist Party being a workers' party, the title Workers' Party, it carries a lot of weight. I'm sure we could think of other parties who call themselves a workers' party who don't exactly have the workers' best interests at heart. But the CPA has a very rich and living history of fighting alongside workers as workers ourselves. As we mentioned before a couple of times, the pig iron dispute, we could think of this as the CPA leading workers in global issues in the 30s with wharfies who wanted to show that their labor shouldn't feel fascism. But we also combat local issues. You know, I think of the Builders Labor Federations in the 70s in the Green Bands who stood up for their local community and the environment as well. And the CPA was involved this whole time, not only as leaders and organizers, but as rank and file workers at the time. Even our historical figures, you know, like Lance Sharkey and Peter Simons, these were people who came from the shop floor and even during their tenure remained intimately connected with the workers, either through unions or through rank and file throughout their leadership. And this history of a worker-led movement, it isn't, you know, like a monument or folklore. It's a blueprint and a manual for how we still operate today and will operate in the future, you know. I think of our heavy involvement in organizations like the CFMEU, the MUA, RBTU, insert whatever union you're part of here. And our party, you know, it wasn't founded as a think tank of an idea that is to be imposed on the workers. It was forged and shaped in the struggle of the working class. And, you know, that's where we remain today. And this is a legacy that drives us. We're not just allies or a solidarity movement. We are the workers in these movements. We are the ones in the meetings, on the streets, arguing for the same militant solidarity that defined our past. You know, 100 years in the future is our task still remains to rebuild and bolster that essential organic link to the working class to ensure that the party is a voice for the rank and file, for the union delegate, and every single worker who knows the system is against them. The history of the CPA is a history of the Australian working class militancy. To honor it, we must live it. So I hope that we remain a party that is of the workplaces, of the unions, and for every worker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colton. I'd now like to invite Comrade Amelia Dale from the Canberra branch to share her perspective.
Comrades and friends, it's an absolute honour to pass on greetings on behalf of the Canberra branch. The Communist Party of Australia has navigated the rough winds of history. Despite everything thrown at us, we've survived. We are the party that was founded in 1920. Women like Christian Jolly Smith and Catherine Susanna Pritchard, as we've heard about, played a crucial role in our founding. We've experienced years of strength and consolidation under Lance Sharkey, who led our party through the post-war period into the 1940s and into the 1960s. He gave us valuable thought on unions, which is relevant to the work that we do in unions today. Shortly after his death, Peter Simon became General Secretary of our party. General Secretary Simon consolidated the party's line on proletarian internationalism. And not only did we survive the crisis of Eurocommunism, we survived the collapse of the Soviet Union. After Simon, the late Comrade Hannah Middleton laid the groundwork for the thriving party that we inherit today. Comrade Middleton built on our party's long history of fighting for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander sovereignty. She made First Nations justice central to her work, brought environmental issues into the fore, a struggle for survival, essential to our work today. Comrades, we operate in a party which has been going from December 24th, 1920, with a resolution to create a party capable of proposing a new machine, quote, a new economic and social system, in other words, a dictatorship of the proletariat. Thank you, comrades. Long live the CPA. The struggle must continue.
Thank you very much, Amelia. I'd like to now invite Comrade Alex Michaels from the Cumberland branch to give us his perspective.
Thank you, comrades. I'm privileged to have been asked to speak at the 105th anniversary of the Communist Party of Australia. And I've been asked to say a few words about the party, and for the sake of time and brevity, I'll try to keep it short. When I joined the party, I came in through the Maritime branch, and our branch meetings were filled with intense discussions around actions locally and internationally that seemed beyond anything I could have imagined as a young and rather green member of the party. I learned about the role that communists play in the workplace and in their trade unions, and how powerful a force we've been historically and remain to this day in the maritime industry. One of the first struggles I learned about was the Hutchison dispute at Port Botany in 2015. Overnight, close to 100 workers were suddenly sacked without warning, including union delegates, health and safety representatives, and agitators. This was a calculated move by the company, an attempt to rid themselves of troublemakers in one fell swoop behind the veil of efficiency. Community pickets formed in response and disrupted Hutchison's operations for weeks and weeks, with communists leading that struggle. Comrades were living out of their cars to hold the line, and hold it they did. Community support ensured people could continue to eat, pay rents or their mortgages, and support their families despite the sustained loss of pay. This disruption lasted 136 days in total, and forced Hutchison to back off, resulting in no forced redundancies and a reduced number of voluntary redundancies. Those who accepted redundancy saw enhanced payouts far beyond legal obligations, with a clause to be able to return to work in some circumstances. In light of this, it's worth repeating the adage, one day longer, one day stronger. Comrades, this example and many others like it greatly informed me on the kind of work we do in the Communist Party. It shows us a path forward, how we conduct ourselves, how to embed ourselves in the working class, and how to earn the leadership of people who themselves are not always progressive. How to focus on the material realities of the working class and actively build the path to socialism. This approach has distinguished the Communist Party to me. 105 years is a long and proud history of these kinds of actions, and we will continue to carry that torch long into the future. Comrades involved in the Hutchison struggle are in this meeting today, and that was just one example of the power of communists in the workplace. To me, this showed an example of what we can achieve, the role of the party, and how we fight back against the powers that be in a material way, and ultimately carve out a better society, not through backdoor deals and tightly controlled electoral processes, but through the confrontation of capital at its most pressing contradiction, the exploitation of human labor at its point of exchange on the market, where we can force them to retreat through the power of the working class and the leadership of the Communist Party. Thank you, comrades.
Unfortunately, Comrade Michael Perth from the Adelaide branch had to withdraw at the last minute, and he sends his apologies. I'd like to now invite Comrade Amber Young from the Hunter branch to share their perspective.
Thank you, comrade. Hello, comrades. My name is Amber, and I'm the chairperson of the Hunter branch, the first woman to be elected New South Wales State Secretary, and a National Congress delegate. Before I joined the CPA, I was a member of the Greens. I believed in their vague pillars of social justice, grassroots democracy, and non-violence. These were principles I believed in. But when Senator Lydia Thorpe was bullied out of the Greens for abiding by these principles, my trust in the party was shattered. It was then when I seriously began to educate myself in Marxist theory. Through this process, I had become aware of the flaws of modern social democracy. I came to understand that the capitalist system could not be fought from within, and that non-violence was a political dead end. When the Zionist entity launched its latest open assault on the sovereignty of the Palestinian people, I was angry. I wanted to do something. When I had heard that there was going to be a rally for Palestine organized in Newcastle, I was set on attending. This was my first proper contact with the CPA. Over time, I got to know the Hunter branch and what the CPA actually stood for. See, I had been told the CPA was a lot of things, but when I saw the work they were doing and got to know the people doing it, I realized that most of what I was told was lies. I decided to join this party 1.5 years ago because I believe in its cause, its actions, the science of Marxism-Leninism, and the importance of struggle. Most importantly, I joined this party because of the principles it espoused. Now, I have been asked to talk about a figure from the party's history. While there are many to choose from, I chose one that I think is criminally under-discussed considering our drive to increase our membership of women. I first learned of Catherine Susanna Pritchard when creating a post on communist women for the CPA's Instagram. I was surprised, to be quite frank, how during my membership in the Communist Party had I not heard of a famous Australian woman who happened to be a founding member of our party. We talk a lot about prominent communist men like Marx, Engels, Lenin, Lance Sharkey, Jack McPhillips, and Peter Simon, to name a few. But what of our women? As we approach our 15th Congress, I ask that comrades remember the principles on which our party is based. I ask that we approach each other not as enemies, but as comrades united in struggle, remembering that we all want what is best for the Communist Party. I look forward to seeing comrades at the Congress next year, and I am sure that there will be very important discussions about the future of this company. This party. Long live the Communist Party of Australia.
Thank you, Comrade Amber. And I've just been told that Comrade Dylan Clive will give us his perspective from the Adelaide branch. So, Dylan.
Hi, comrades. As said, my name is Dylan. I'm the South Australian State Secretary of the CPA, speaking to you here from the traditional lands of the Kaurna people. I send apologies from both Comrade Michael Perth and our dear comrade Bob Saltis, who both were planning to speak tonight, but unfortunately our apologies. Comrade Bob, who wished to speak tonight, is an active member of the Port Adelaide branch at the ripe young age of 94, and whose dialectical analysis and years of experience are a huge benefit to our party, and who would have many strong words to contribute to tonight's celebration. In this place, I'd like to just say a huge congratulations to the Communist Party of Australia nationally for 105 years of constant struggle for working class power and the fight for socialism. Here in South Australia, we've seen a doubling of membership in the last few years and moving forward in a period of great growth, both in regard to strengthening our organisation and our actions, and new members joining the party, and will continue to build the much needed communist influence here in South Australia. Despite the immense challenges faced by communists over the past 105 years, the party and the struggle for socialism will continue as long as the anti-human system of capitalism and imperialism remains dominant and will not sit by idle. Long live the Communist Party of Australia. All power to the working class.
Thank you, Comrade Dylan. We're now moving to Queensland, to the Queensland State Committee, and Comrade David Matters is going to give us his perspective from that committee.
Welcome. Thank you, comrades. Firstly, I acknowledge I'm speaking from Quandamooka land, sovereignty never ceded. Comrades, Queensland's a large state and a large industrial state with a very strongly agribusiness and strong mining industries. It is a state that, from its inception, has been very much part of the colonial legacy. So the struggle, and I've been up north recently, in around where they called the Red North, which was famous for people like Jack Henry, Jimmy Henderson, who was mentioned before, and Fred Patterson and other comrades. And they were around an area that was considered to be conservative. But the fact is that communists were successful in leading struggles in that particular region. It's vast and important that we understand that the development of the party throughout the country in all centres is very important. I'm the newly appointed development officer of the State Committee, and the purpose of that is to create and bring into being more branches of the party throughout Queensland. And in doing so, we're paying respect to the memories of some comrades, and some don't get a mention, but my own industry, the bus industry, was seeded from the tram industry. We had 3 Communist Party branches in that small industry, and that was repeated all over. There were people in the mining industry, electronics industries, and we need to keep finding our way back to leading and working with workers. But the thing that's always stood out about the Communist Party is it goes where there's the most oppression. When you talk about waterside workers and seamen, it's hard to think about the degree of oppression that occurred for them, or tramway workers. For instance, tramway workers died of silicosis, and the communists were instrumental in the struggle against the sand that was being placed on to slow down the trams that was causing those diseases. We've been active in recent years. We were active in the struggle against the sacking of the CPA workers. That's when I came in to the picture through the struggle. Then Joe Bielke, the reactionary, sacked 1,000 workers from the electrical industry. We were active in the struggle against the sacking of the whole of the railway workers in Queensland. We were active in defending Lex Wadden, who was being tried by the Labor government using colonial laws to try to put the man in jail for the rest of his life, and we were part of that campaign to stop him, and the humbling when he thanked us for stopping that being taken away from the Palm Island Reserve, which is a colonial penal colony just off the coast of Townsville. We've been active in the Voice campaign in support of the Yes campaign. But I'm reminded also when I talk about historic figures like Uncle Bob, who still has immense respect for our party and was one of the first First Nations organisers in the BWIU then, now CFMEU. And he took all his time off to be on leave to sit in the square during the 1967 referendum. Our party needs to be stronger, because without our party's presence in the 67 referendum, First Nations people would probably still be considered flora and fauna. That's the reality of the struggle and contribution that communists need to make in these struggles. So I say it's important that we have our 105th year. It's It's important also that we try to bring back together the unity of all communists, because many left and some wandered off in different directions and got confused and lost their way. We need to make it easier for them to find their way back. And we need to make sure they understand that that's an important part of the process. It is not keeping communists divided that is the answer, and trying to purify our ideas by sectarian behaviour. It's actually finding ways to work commonly together and to overcome the differences. That's what impressed me during the work of then SPA and the speech that Jim Henderson, then president of the Socialist Party, made when we had to determine and tell the workers in the electrical dispute that the strike was over and that they had to find a way to live their life. I admired the courage and the honesty of our comrades, that they were able to say that openly to workers. So that's the importance of understanding a little bit about our history. And I'd mentioned Tommy Simmons, one of our rank and file treasurers, but also one of the people that was active in the army and part of the bevy of recruits we made in the army, and a lifelong contributor who held us all together during the dark days of counter-revolution. So thank you, comrades. As many more should be mentioned. There are hundreds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade David. Still in Queensland, we're going to hear from Comrade Che Jantz from the Sunshine Branch. So welcome, Che, and we're happy to hear your perspective.
Hello, comrades. Can you hear me all right before I start? Okay, excellent. I'm sorry, my mic's a bit dodgy. I'd like to first say before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the elders of which I meet in the Sunshine Coast, which is the Gubbi Gubbi and Jurumbarra people, and the Sunshine Branch, and of course every other branch of the CPA stands with elders of the past, emerging, and future. I'm also the Sunshine Coast branch secretary, a co-founder of the branch, along with Graham, who's in attendance today. And I'm also a delegate for Congress next year. Now, I personally have a bit of a reputation as a bit of a waffler. And the fact I've only got a short amount of time, for the first time in my life, I've actually written down the speech I'll give to you all tonight. For the Sunshine Coast branch, we've lost our title as the youngest branch of the party to the new Cumberland branch. Congratulations, Christian. But still comparably a new branch, now roving this long tapestry that is our party, we still find ourselves in quite a spot. Now, the Sunshine Coast region overall makes our position for community outreach and representing what the party stands for and spreading awareness to the community is certainly an upheaval, as a region encompasses both the bustling city centres of Maroochydore and Caloundra, which is full of retirees with old money, yuppies and disenfranchised young people, whilst it also encompasses the rural hinterland towns and localities of Nambour, Woombye and Kenilworth. Although these places I proudly call home, I wouldn't recommend any fellow party members to wave around the membership cards if they ever come visit, as you might hear the sounds of ominous banjo music creeping upon you. But regardless of all this fairly hostile environment, the Sunshine Coast branch has indeed skyrocketed, inducting 4 new members this year, potentially another 1 or 2 before December. And I believe there's a lot they attribute to our branch level to the success, but ultimately it all boils back down to fundamentally what the party is and does. People have told us when we go out in the community that we are the first time they've ever seen communists in the area for decades sometimes, which sounds a bit daunting at first, but when I understand that this does not come from a place of fear or concern, it comes from genuine curiosity and interest and intrigue, knowing that the CPA has survived and is still there willing to fight for these people. Now, the CPA, we are intransigent for our support of workers' rights, First Nations liberation, and queer and trans freedom to all who are with threats. These groups and all the other oppressed groups in this nation have already beginning to realise, or already have realised, that the so-called centre-left does not care about them, whilst the CPA does, and our care goes far beyond words. We organise, we levy, we fight for them, and we have done this for over a century now with no times of slowing. our branch has embarked particularly a lot in trans rights activism in Queensland, as the reactionary LNP government has made it their personal mandate to discriminate and bully trans youth. Yesterday, we attended a snap rally protesting against the most blatant abuse of power in Queensland ever since the days of Jyoti Peterson, as Health Minister Tim Nicholas undermined the Supreme Court decision in legalising puberty blockers by using his ministerial powers to reinstate the ban. Now, when we go to these rallies, we get a lot of people from all walks of life asking about the CPA. Like, why are we there? And and it sounds funny to say, but I'm proud to regale them with information about all the progressive campaigns the CPA has fought for. We were the first Australian political party to make a commitment to First Nations rights. Practically every conceivable progressive economic campaign was spearheaded or first uttered by the CPA. I love seeing how people's eyes just light up when we tell them this information, because it goes to show that so many people appreciate the CPA's work and appreciate what we've fundamentally done for Australian society by and large, but so many of them just haven't been aware it was us all along who've done all these great things. And personally, for me, this is something I both love about the party in terms of we've done this. We keep doing this, and we should be proud that we do this as the most progressive party that has fought for the most change in Australia. But it also saddens me that we don't get that recognition. Now, our branch have also has held a stall at Pride Outside, which was an anti-capitalist queer event, which embraces the grassroots revolutionary roots of the queer and trans rights movement. Our attendance went far beyond just showing the CPA supports the community, but we actually inducted a survey, a short survey asking from the attendees of the event a series of questions ranging from how organizations like the CPA could fight for them and better recognize them. But the insight we got from this was incredible, as it reveals, although frankly a lot of attendees knew little to nothing about the CPA, everyone, practically everyone anyway, greatly aligned with our ideology. The survey and reports that we've gained will be shortly released to the rest of the party. And I do hope other comrades take from it more than just the battle for LGBTQ rights and how to represent queer and trans people, but how the best way for the party to represent people and know exactly how we should be fighting for the rights of these people is simply communication and getting out there in the community and knowing how we can fight for them. Now, every member here today should be proud of this fact. You all individually have made a choice, an individual choice, that you wanted to be actively a fighter and an agitator for the future for everyone to benefit, not just yourself. Our mission has never folded from this in our 105 years of operation. And I personally, through my 5 or so membership of the party, I'm greatly refreshed to see so many other people waking up and seeing this themselves. Now, I would also like to add at today's meeting,
I might have to get you to sort of start to wrap up.
Okay, yeah, I'm nearly done. Don't worry. I'm at my last paragraph. I would greatly like to add to those meetings. There's been many mentions of Fred Patterson, and rightfully so, as his tenure as the member of the Bone, although brief, was a great testament to the party's great works and ideology. I would like to say the Sunshine Coast branch is particularly privileged to have his living nephew, John Patterson, as a member of our branch. His contributions to promoting his living legacy of Fred Patterson and showing how his great works and the battles Fred Patterson fought for are entirely relevant to the CPA now is a great attribute and a great asset that the Sunshine Branch has. I thank all the attendees today and a big well wishes from all the membership from the Sunshine Coast Branch, and be rest assured that there's a reason the party has made it to this incredible milestone, because we've always stood for the best way forward for everyone in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Che. Now we've come to our last contributor tonight, which is Comrade Christian Goopy from the New South Wales State Committee. Christian, can you give us your perspective?
Good evening, comrades, and I would like to once again express my congratulations for us celebrating our 105th Party Foundation anniversary. The decisions to form a Communist Party in this country following the October Revolution was a monumental milestone in our country's history and in the history of the working class in this country. And we can be confident and certain that our country is a better place for the existence of a Communist Party and for communists. And it can sometimes come from work that's relatively small, or may appear to be small to begin with. I don't think that the comrades who worked in the building industry, who worked to organise together, form a party branch within that industry and work to transform the Builders Labourers Federation from a corrupt and right-wing union into one which workers had genuine control and democratic agency over, could have imagined that that could have led to enduring consequences such as the saving of the rocks in Sydney or remnant vegetation bushland on the Sydney Harbour or many of the heritage buildings that exist as a direct flow-on consequence from their party work and through the Green Bands program which has been discussed. This is something that I like to be able to speak to people who are not communists and who are not familiar with it, that in many ways the existence of some of the things that you can see in Sydney by walking around, that their continued existence and endurance is because of the work of communists and because we've been here. We've heard from many of the other speakers about how the wages and conditions, the strides towards gender equality, and many of the progressive social advances that have occurred in this country are a direct result of the work of communists. We have also heard from many important and significant figures in our party's history, such as Jim Healy, who had a style of work which is extremely important in terms of his constant striving for unity and to find ways to have people work together for the interests of a working class. And he could even make those who are incredibly hostile to us, incredibly hostile to the party, work in the interests of workers. So I think that these are examples that we can look towards and we can think of in terms of the impact that we'll have as we go forward into the future over the next 100 years. We've had many incredible successes and we've had many difficult periods, but I know that we can overcome those and we can move forwards to achieve new and greater victories as we go on to transform our country into a socialist country. So I'll leave it there. Long live our party and long live the working class.
Long live.
Thank you very much, Christian. As we come to the end of our proceedings, I'd like to again thank the diplomatic representatives who have shared this day with us. I'd also like to thank again Peter Lim for his keynote speech, which was a wonderful contribution. And I'd like to thank all of our contributors tonight for making this 105th anniversary memorable. We know that this is a century for socialism, and we must continue our work and we must work harder to transform this society. If we work hard, if we come together, if we mobilise, we can all contribute to the strengthening of the Communist Party of Australia and develop it into a leading force for the Australian working class. The Communist Party of Australia is committed to building on another 105 years of our history towards the better world that we all know is possible. We know why we're here and we are committed to the ongoing struggle. We're going to hear the Internationale. We always finish our events by listening to this very important song. And if everybody can turn their cameras on, hopefully we can get a couple of screenshots of you all here celebrating this event. Thank you so much for attending today, for everyone who has attended. I hope you've enjoyed this celebration of our 105 years, and I'll hand over to Vinnie to start the Internationale. Andy. Okay. Well, we'll see if we can sort them. Yeah, no, that's that. Oh, Lexi can hear it. Oh.
Okay.
All right, everybody can hear it except for us, Andy. So. Thank you, Comrade Andy. And I'd also like to say a special thank you to the Canberra branch, because it's the Canberra branch that has pulled this whole event together. And I think everybody would agree they've done a fantastic job. So please join me in thanking them as well. And now if you can put your cameras on, and we'll try and get a few screenshots so that we can remember this day.
Do we have comrades that can take the screenshots?
We'll do one. I'll do one.
Yes, please. And I'm going to move it here. Is it that one then? Move. Second. Yep. Is it done? Third. All right. Do it another
Okay.
one. And another one. And please send it across for high resolution for printing. Thank you, comrades. It
See
has
you later,
been,
comrades.
yeah, it
Thanks
has
for
been
coming.
fantastic, much appreciated, and we finish on time. And Comrade Dennis reminded us 108 years. We got a website, and people can see many of the videos and passages that we saw today. Much appreciated. Thank you to the diplomats for staying with us. It is wonderful, and long live the struggle, long live the CPA.
Long live the CPA.
Long live the CPA.
Long live the CPA.
Cheers all.
Long live.
Thank you, comrades. All the
Thank you,
best.
comrade.
Thank you, comrades.
Thanks, comrades. We'll
Really
see you in
appreciate
February.
it. On to the next
See you,
105 years.
Thank you, comrades. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.